Welcome back, everyone, to the debate channel. It is August 5th, 2017, and we have some new subjects we'd like to talk to you guys about, one of which being the UN imposes tough new sanctions on North Korea. Trae, what would you like to say about that?
So, this will, these new sanctions will inhibit North Korea's abilities to trade with other nations. Not that many of them were trading with them in the first place, but hopefully it will help them to curb their ambitions a little bit pertaining to their nuclear program. So we're going to read some of this article from the Associated Press real quick. The UN Security Council unanimously approved tough new sanctions Saturday to punish North Korea for its escalating nuclear and missile programs, including a ban on coal and other exports worth over $1 billion, a huge bite in its total exports valued at $3 billion last year. So these new sanctions are going to affect about 1/3 of all of the trade, of all the exports that go from North Korea to other nations. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley called the resolution the single largest economic sanctions package ever leveled against the North Korean regime, and the most stringent set of sanctions on any country in a generation. Pretty bold words from our UN ambassador today. But she warned that it is not enough, and we should not fool ourselves into thinking we have solved the problem, not even close. So, she is right in that situation where we are far from solving the entire problem. I recently listened to a podcast from the Bernie Sanders show, and he had on one of the secretaries of defense from the Clinton presidency, and they were basically talking about how there is a path to diplomacy, and it's not going to be easy, but we can get North Korea to give up their nuclear weapons, and we are moving in the right direction, however long that may take, because he was also talking about how there was a time when we almost went to war with North Korea in the 1990s, and preemptive strikes were greatly considered. So
I think it was a great move for the United Nations to just do anything you can to get less involved with North Korea. That's probably a good thing, because really no one likes North Korea, if we're being honest. So,
and basically what we can do is play to the regime a little bit, because the most important thing to the Kim dynasty is that they can continue that regime. So if they have to give up their nuclear program to do that, then that might be on the table, as long as they can preserve that dynasty. So I will read a little bit more from this article. The threat of an outlaw nuclearized North Korean dictatorship remains and is rapidly growing more dangerous, Haley told council members after the vote. The U.S. drafted resolution negotiated with North Korea's neighbor and ally, China, is aimed at increasing economic pressure on Pyongyang to return to negotiations on its nuclear and missile programs, a point stressed by all 15 council members in speeches after the vote. So, an important part would be including China in these negotiations, because as their only ally, China plays kind of a big part in this, even though they've sort of moved away from supporting North Korea in the past few years.
This is one new, very recent thing that happened just last night, I think. West Virginia Governor Jim Justice announced at the Trump rally that he'll be switching parties from Democrat to Republican. What are your thoughts on this?
You know, I didn't get a large chance to review this, but I kind of glanced over it a little bit. I think the only reason he did that was because he's pro-coal and Trump is supposedly pro-coal, so I think those are the real motivations behind that.
That's right.
What are your thoughts?
I agree with that too. I think, that state is a very high approval rating for President Trump, and just like you said, they're both very pro-coal, and I think that's the main reason why he switched.
We didn't need him anyway. We didn't need him in the party.
Well, at this point,
You can have him Republicans.
At this point in Congress, about everyone, not in Congress, but just as a nation, everyone counts because of how close we are, with Congress not being able to do much because they're very evenly balanced between Republicans and Democrats, both.
Well, I agree with you there. Congress does not get much done.
They can't. Having a very hard time.
Which leads us into a little bit of our next story. Congress must prove its mettle this fall. It has no choice. So this came from Washington Today. Congress will have to prove its mettle this fall. It has no choice. Republicans have little to show for their first 7 months of controlling the White House and Capitol Hill. The Senate sent Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, and Congress passed bills bolstering veterans' health programs and financing the Food and Drug Administration. It approved another sanctioning Russia for its 2016 election meddling, which President Donald Trump resentfully signed, knowing Congress would lopsidedly override a veto. So that goes back to what we were just talking about. Republicans do have control in all three branches of government right now and still cannot get anything done. Now, the cause of that could still be up for debate.
Yeah, part of the problem that the Republicans are having is they have multiple people in there as Republicans that are not voting Republican. John McCain from Arizona, he's having a really hard time agreeing with anything President Trump wants. They're two very different types of Republicans.
That's true, and that's true for Democrats as well. I was just thinking about the footage from the vote on the Obamacare repeal when it was going to be 50-50, and John McCain went up and voted no, and Mitch McConnell looked horrified, and McCain kind of stood there and looked at him for a second, and he was like, McConnell was probably waiting for him to say, just kidding, but he didn't, because he was real and serious. So I thought that reminded me of that, and I thought it was kind of funny.
I didn't think it was that funny.
I thought it was hilarious, because that means that the repeal bill was dead in the water, and it most likely will be for a long time. Now, what we need to focus on is improving the Affordable Care Act instead of repealing it.
How are we going to do that?
How are we going to do that?
Yeah.
If you want my opinion on that, we can just move towards a Medicare for All system, which means you don't have to worry about premiums. Employers don't have to worry about coverage for their workers, so it eliminates a lot of the costs. Now, taxes would go up about $1,000 per person. While that may seem scary, the actual savings from that would be around $9,000. So you get a great deal there through government-funded healthcare.
How's that even possible?
How is that possible?
Yes.
Because of all of the inefficiencies within the system itself. When you move towards government-controlled healthcare, then you eliminate a lot of those, and it's actually better for businesses because they don't have to worry about providing health coverage, which means you can also move towards things like minimum wage increases, which would improve the lives of many millions of Americans all across the country.
I think with what you're saying, it sounds good, but I think that if that was all true, wouldn't everyone agree with that too? Because that sounds very, good, but there's plenty of people that would not agree with that. Why is that?
Well, the thing is that the majority of the American people do want Medicare for all. I don't have the exact polling numbers right now, but it's in the ballpark of 60 to 70% for everyone, which is that's really good for national legislation of any form to get both parties to agree on that.
And you say by everyone, if you're going to be giving people more, if you say you're going to provide health care to everyone, that means that first off we're $20 trillion in debt. So if we're going to be getting all these people that can't be on healthcare, that's got to be coming from somebody, right? And that's going to be that's going to be taxpayers for the most part. And that's why I think that why people don't like it.
Well, here's the
Because that's
thing.
going to be screwing those people there.
Well, here's the thing. With something of this nature, something of like Medicare for All, you wouldn't have to increase taxes on the middle class or the poor. What you would have to do is collect the uncollected taxes that are just sitting right now in offshore accounts that are right now untouchable by the government because of the current laws in the tax system. So once you fix the tax system, you can fix the healthcare system, and then that helps businesses, raises the minimum wage, or leads to raising the minimum wage, and then it's kind of like a chain reaction, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little synopsis on that. That is where we will leave that for now. Again, as always, I encourage you to subscribe, to share, to like,
and we will be back with more next week.
Yes,
thank you for joining.
That is true. Debate channel.